Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Hump Day edition of the Yard. Hope you are well. Hope everybody you love is well. Hope everybody you love is out of harm's way. It has been a difficult few days for people in North Mississippi. We're going to talk a little bit about that here in the early segment of the show. Cool top 10 list by request. Talk some men's and women's hoops, and we'll see what else we can get into. Got some portal stuff we can talk about, too. Some new developments in the portal. Some of outgoing Bulldogs have found homes, and a new visitor expected today. Probably may be here by now, by the time you listen to this show. So first thing, right out of the gate, I want to always use this platform not just to educate and entertain, but to inform. For those of you that have kept up, there's a crisis going on in the South with these icy roadways, and I want to speak about that just a little bit. So it was shared today that I-55 North is going to be closed at Grenada. So if you were looking to travel north, you're going to have to find an alternate route. What's happening is we have some people that have been stranded, some for the better part of 2 nights on I-55. Some people have, moved their cars to the shoulder and abandoned them and will come back to get them. Others are just kind of toughing it out. Similar, not as difficult a situation, but there are some situations on I-22 as well. Now, they're going to shut off traffic heading westbound at Marshall County, right there around New Albany. So if that is a normal thoroughfare for you, you're going to have to find some alternate modes of transportation. We have some people that have endured something that will remain with them the rest of their lives. Now, I've seen some social media commentary, and I just say, let me just be grateful it's not you, right, or somebody that you love. Some people say, well, everybody should have known. Well, nobody knew that they would still have these issues, and many of those people were just trying to get to work, right? It wasn't just like people out sightseeing, taking a Sunday drive or whatever. Many of these people were well-intended in their travel, and now they're caught up in a nightmare. Over in Louisiana and Lincoln Parish around Ruston, they're having some similar situations where people have been there 36 to 48 hours. Saw a video earlier today, a former trucker, I guess he's actually a trucker now, but he partnered with some other people and worked with Chick-fil-A there in Ruston, and they provided water and chicken sandwiches to those people stuck in traffic. What a great gesture and humanitarian effort. It reminds me that there are great people in this world that care about other people they don't know. And can you imagine being that person sitting there, frustrated, stressed out, cold, tired? Because you know as well as I do, nobody's been able to get any quality sleep under those circumstances, and somebody just shows up with a chicken sandwich and a bottle of water and says, hey man, just want to make sure you're good. Those kinds of things go a long way. And at times of crisis, it brings out kind of the best of people and the worst of people, and it's good to know that there are people out there that are doing some great things. So I wanted to share that with you, again, because maybe you are unaware, as we've had some people that have kind of been surprised by some of this. So again, if you're traveling on I-55 North, you're going to have to get off the interstate at Grenada. If you're traveling I-22 West, you're going to have to get off there around New Albany. Understand that. Be prepared for that. I want to talk a little bit, too, about our friends in Tippah County. I've got people that I love in Tippah County. I do. There are people that I absolutely love there. And a couple of days ago, I checked, and I'm pulling these numbers from memory, okay? And this is no way a criticism of anybody involved at Tippah County, okay? I'm just kind of stating facts here. This is not in any way an indictment on anybody. But if memory serves me correct, the Tippah County electric grid up there has about 14,362 homes. I think that's right. Something like that. Maybe it's 11,000. But either way, on Monday morning, 14 homes had power. To magnify the misery, they had 2 gas mains around Ripley that ruptured. One of them an underwater gas main. They've got that corrected. They also had some water mains that ruptured. So some of our neighbors in Tippah County, Mississippi, had no power, no gas, no water. To make matters worse, a lot of the roads were impassable for a period of time. So these people were essentially stranded in their homes with no utilities. And with no power, you got no Wi-Fi. There's just so much here, the modern conveniences. I had one story that I was following closely, and I'm going to change some of the details because I don't want to embarrass these people because I don't know them. I was kind of following it on social media. But there was a lady that is in poor health and is bedridden, and her husband didn't have any utilities. And on top of that, she had some medical equipment that was beginning to fail. And some great Mississippians, some incredible Mississippians began to kind of work together. As this plays out on social media, people are like, well, hey, where is this? We want to help. Guys, there was probably 25 people. They were just like, hey, I've got a friend that's got a side-by-side. I got a friend that's got a four-wheeler. I got a friend that's got this. What can we do? How can we help? Within hours, someone had brought a backup battery to the family to ensure that her medical equipment continued to function, took her battery, brought it home, recharged it, and brought it back to them, right? Eventually, they were able to get to them, get them evacuated out, and I don't know if the National Guard was involved or just local responders, but they were able to get this lady and her husband out and into warmth, and it just warms the heart, right? Because you don't factor in that. Those are the most vulnerable in our society, right? And here we are, complete strangers, only connected by Al Gore's internet, going out of their way to help somebody they've never met. Right? That's the best of us. And one of the things that I love about being from Mississippi, and we're a punching bag for a lot of people. But in times of crisis, nobody has more generosity and more grit than Mississippians. We have a quiet dignity about us. We just kind of get things handled. And so for those of you in Tippah County that were involved in that, God bless you. God bless you. And thank you. Thank you. You are what makes this state great. Stories like that need to be told. I wish I knew more of the particulars so I could maybe call out some names of some of these heroes. But there are other people that, within the sound of my voice, that have no idea about what's playing out here. And we take so much for granted. And again, we lost power for one night, and I can't even begin to tell you how miserable just one night was. And to think that there are other people out there stranded on an interstate for multiple nights. There are people that are bedridden with no access to services that are probably sitting around wondering if this is it. And their neighbors stepped up and helped them. Absolutely, God bless them. And I understand the situation in Tippah County is getting better. They got the gas main fixed, so then all of a sudden people that have gas heat were able to get that, right? Began to get some of the trees removed from the roads, and so we're starting to see a little bit of return to normalcy there, but it's still a long way to go. And of course, we've heard so much about our neighbors in Lafayette County and Oxford, and many of them may be without power for weeks. And so I share those things with you because, hey, we're Bulldogs, but we're also Mississippians. But more importantly, we're all humans. And if it was your family that was in harm's way, if it was your mother or your grandmother, and you were living out of state, and all of a sudden, life-saving medical equipment was going to fail, you'd feel a lot differently about that. You would. And so I want to make sure that we tell those stories and that people understand that there are good people in the world. There are people that are willing to help. Maybe not enough of them, but those people do exist. And I'm going to say this may offend some people, and I'll look around and try to find some sympathy. Those kinds of people are 10,000 times the people that do all this virtue signaling on social media. That's all self-serving. Let's just be honest about it. Maybe you don't want to admit it, but it's true. It's true. It's all self-serving. Yeah, so some people get on Facebook and write these posts, of course, to get likes, whatever, clicks, and that's where it ends. But in Ruston, Louisiana, you got a group of truck drivers and their friends getting on four-wheelers delivering chicken sandwiches to people they don't even know. Those people putting action behind their words. And my hope is, and that's Bible too, let us be doers of the word and not hearers only. Maybe you're familiar with that, James 1:22. Maybe you're familiar with that. But these kinds of people inspire me and make me want to do better things. When I see people doing that, I think, man, I wish I would help more. I wish I could help more rather than just put a hashtag up or put a flag in my bio and show everybody how virtuous I am, right? And what's so great about these guys over in Ruston, they're not the ones championing their cause. It's other people. They just went and picked up a sack full of sandwiches, got a case of water, got on their four-wheelers, and went to find people in need. And it's other people, many of those people that are being cared for by strangers that are sharing the story. And again, those stories are worthy of our recognition. Let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company, longtime sponsors of this show. We love Bulldog Burger Company. I hope that we never have a crisis quite like that, but I can tell you this, if we do, I can promise you Bulldog Burger Company will step up and I'll be out there passing out Bulldog Burgers. Yeah, for sure. Because I know the Eat With Us group will take care of us. They always have. Always. We've celebrated with them, right? Whether it be a Bulldog victory, whether it be an engagement, whether it be a wedding, a graduation, man, they've always had room at their table for us. And I love that about them. They're a huge part of our community. And, of course, Bulldog Burger Company, part of that great family. 3 great locations to serve you: University Drive in Stark Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowwood area. Eat more spring rolls. They make you and everybody around you better looking. They will. It's on the menu. It is. It's not by accident. It's true. It's true. Get that chocolate shake to go. You can ride that ride home with a smile. Find your own favorites. I've got several favorites up there. I've had everything on the menu. I love the comeback burger, but you got to make sure you ask for plenty of napkins with that, because that juicy goodness is going to run down your wrists and fingers and everything else, right? It's wonderful. But if you're a newbie, start with the Bulldog Burger Company signature burger, the Bulldog. You'll be glad you did. You can't go wrong. Like, if that's the only hamburger you ate the rest of your life, you would live life and live it more abundantly. It's true. It's true. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. MEAT. Okay, let's jump into some portal stuff here. Just when you thought maybe it's safe to go back in the water, you're wrong. You're wrong. And Mississippi State hosting an official visitor this evening, Diego Acevedo from Navy. Spent 2 years at the Naval Academy, and you say, well, Steve, how can he transfer? Well, the rules changed a couple years ago. Same reason Paul Skeens was able to transfer from the Air Force. You don't have to have that 4-year commitment if you've got 2 years remaining. But, he redshirted in 24. He's a product of Central Florida Christian Academy. Redshirted in 24, played last year in about 8 games. 6'4", 310, could play tackle or guard. Got good wingspan. And he's played a physical brand of football up there. He's a great student, and obviously a lot of these people that they go to the military academy or one of the service academies for character, right? So he is on campus, and in the event that we don't find a love connection with him, he is going to maybe make a move and visit Arkansas. Now, to make sure you guys understand this, because this question comes up all the time, because not all of our fans listen to the Boneyard. They should. Not all of our fans subscribe to Gene's page. They should. So when you see this out there, you have a chance to correct the record, right? And I don't care if you take credit for it. I just want our fans to be well informed. It's not about me being right. It's about our fans understanding this process. So we can continue to sign players throughout the spring semester. They just can't enroll until after the spring semester is over. Unless, if this Acevedo kid, if this happens, if he commits today, we might be able to work with the registrar's office and get him in. We've had people be up to a week after the drop bad date and getting them in before. So I can't totally rule that out. But there's a couple more spots we got to fill. And so we may have some guys that sign in March, but then they enroll in June, right? So just because the portal is closed and just because the spring semester has started doesn't mean that the portal recruiting phase of this is over. We still got about 3 spots left to fill in the 105, and we will. So it's not like a National Signing Day deal. So the guys from JUCO or high school, there's still the traditional signing day in February, but the portal guys can sign their FAA at any time. Anytime. And that closes out the process by the letter of the law, although Pete Golding and Ole Miss may disagree, and we'll see how that goes. But the reality of it is you're still going to see some portal additions between now and the end of May. And maybe we get those knocked out in March. Because what you do, you bring those guys in during spring practice. And, right now, everybody wants money, 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 right? Well, spring semester starting, so those demands are starting to go down a little bit. And so by the time that you get later in this process, you're going to get some guys that you probably don't have to pay anything for or not much for. Maybe it's $50,000 to $100,000, and that sounds ridiculous for a college student. But a lot of those guys went in a portal with the urging of agents saying, hey, I've talked to this school and that school, we can get you this, we can get you that. And then for one reason or another, it hadn't worked out. And so now the demands for that rev share or NIL compensation are beginning to drop. So the leverage shifts, as we've talked about before on the show. So I want you to be aware of that, because what's going to happen inevitably, we'll pick up a portal commitment in March. And then there's going to be John Q. Bulldog, who we love, that is really more of a casual fan, be like, hey, how could he sign? I thought the portal was closed. You'll be able to explain it to him because right? You understand. You're one of the more well-informed fans within our fan base, and you can authoritatively say, yes, it's true, the portal's closed. However, we can continue to sign players that are in the portal and have them enroll in June. And that's as simple as I can make it, right? That's important to understand. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens with no spring portal, right? And we talked a little bit about this on the show a couple days ago. What does this mean for the spring game? Remember how many people within the SEC didn't have a true spring game? And then those that didn't televise it. I think there was only one spring game televised in the SEC because everybody was worried about, well, if a guy has a good spring game and then his agent starts shopping him and says, hey, we're going to just go get in the spring portal. Well, now that encumbrance has been removed. Now you don't have the threat. Guys are locked in now for a year unless they just don't want to play. So you can't go through spring practice and then go jump in the portal and go somewhere else. And as we talked about last year, there were some agents out there, and not all these guys are bad guys. Don't think I'm painting with a broad brush. I have communication with some of these agents, had communication with Acevedo's agent today. But there are some guys out there that are unscrupulous that make everybody look bad. And that's wrong, right? So you had some guys last year that would tell a guy, hey, get in the portal in December. And they do. They get paid. They transfer in. They go through the spring. And the agent is still shopping them. And it's like, hey, I know you just went there, but I can get you, this more money if you transfer again. And a lot of these guys out there, number one, want the money, and some need the money. And as a result, the agent and the player was double dipping at the expense of two schools. That has now been removed. And that's a great thing. Now, we still got to figure out this calendar thing. We still have to. I know that Jeff Lebby is on the road right now. Jeff Lebby, last I heard, was in Georgia, right? You're going to see high school kids. Just last week he was in Poplarville seeing Ty Keys. And so we're doing a lot of these in-person visits now. We just got done closing out portal stuff for the most part last week. We've had a group of coaches on the road all throughout the month of January. This is the last week. And then in the middle of all this, Jeff Levy's on the road, going out, visiting schools, extending offers, shaking hands, taking pictures. And then meanwhile, he's got an offensive line prospect making arrangements to get here for an official visit and be here for dinner tonight. You know, it's good work if you can get it. It's high-paying work, but it's also a lot of work. And it's a lot of high stress, a lot of high stakes, because you all want to win. You want to win big. And you want to know that your head football coach is out there beating the bushes trying to find the best players possible. But there's no downtime. Not anymore. Kind of moving along to, as you guys know, we've kind of been tracking the former Bulldogs, the ones that went in the portal. And again, no beef against those guys. I mean, there's nobody that left that we really wanted to leave. Of course, you know, we probably would have preferred to have Javen James and Luke Work back, but, you know, kind of is what it is. We traded out 8 transfer-out linemen for 8 transfer-in linemen. We had 3 graduate, and we signed 5 from the high school and junior college ranks. So we're going to carry 22 offensive linemen this year. But we had 39 transfers out. Just kind of updating you on a couple things that maybe have transpired since we had a chance to talk about it recently. But Montrell Chapman, you remember he was a star at South Panola High School, spent a couple of years at JUCO, redshirted this year at Mississippi State, played sparingly, but was able to preserve the redshirt year. He's headed to Old Dominion. Old Dominion, yep. And probably a level where he can play. Johnny Daniels, running back, headed to Tulane, and I think Johnny will do well there, right? I do. Obviously, Will Hall and that group is down there. They're familiar with Johnny. I thought Johnny would probably go to Southern Miss. Kind of a similar situation here. So wish Johnny the best. And again, I really thought he played hard for Mississippi State. Was a little bit surprised that he redshirted this year, but we wish him the best as he kind of moves forward. I don't know if we've touched on this. Davion Diamond Jackson headed to Texas State. A.J. Kinney will know how to use him. So yeah, we'll see how that kind of progresses and just kind of moves forward with him. But again, kind of wishing him the best too. Terrence Hibbler headed to Jackson State. That surprises me. Not that I expected maybe him to be a Power 4 guy, but I thought he would land at a solid G5 program, but he's going to Jackson State. Now, could work out for him. He needs to get on the field. Perhaps he goes to Jackson State, has a big year, goes back in the portal and gives himself a chance to get to the G5. And it's so crazy that we think in those terms these days instead of a guy committing to his school, being part of a family, getting his college degree, and then maybe having a chance to go play pro football. A lot of this is just now kind of like rent a player type deal. But as it stands today, there's now a handful of guys that are unsigned. And, of course, they'll have the opportunity, those that have eligibility left, to sign all the way up until the summer, really. But DK Magruder, remember him? He was the last portal prospect last year. We added him, did not play. We didn't expect him to play. He was a depth piece. He's in the portal and probably a guy that we shouldn't have signed, all due respect to him, because basically he came in, got a year of coaching, and just didn't make a contribution. Probably would have been better off going to like a Southern Miss or a Memphis, somewhere like that where he could have played. Dwight Lewis, of course, remains unsigned, and he still continues to tweet out his video. He just doesn't have any eligibility left. It's going to be a matter that is a litigation thing. There's no waiver to file, right, because he's already played his 5 years. He's trying to say that he had 2 redshirt years at his previous stop. That's just not true. Just because you didn't play a lot as a redshirt freshman doesn't mean that year serves as a redshirt year. And I love the guy, but I just don't think it's going to work out for him. Amika Aloy, remember him? He still hasn't signed. He was the tight end from Oklahoma that missed a year. Frizzell Shepard, of course, went in late. Another guy, too, I'm not so sure how much he loves football. And then same thing for Lojack. No real news there unless it's happened today. Brennan Smith, of course, that requires a waiver, a medical hardship year for him. So we're just down to, a half dozen or so guys that haven't found the place, and chances are it won't happen right away. Maybe some guys, obviously, kind of like we've talked about. We're looking for some guys, too, that may be signed later in the semester. And we hope all these guys get the opportunity. Again, absolutely no beef, no problem with any of those guys. None of those guys are bad actors. Not the guys we're talking about. We've had a couple guys here who've had some issues now and again and got dismissed from the team. But, Lojack is one that really surprises me. He had a great senior year. We knew he would redshirt this year. We thought maybe he would have the opportunity to play as a redshirt freshman. goes home during an open date and just didn't come back. It just didn't come back. And so that's the thing I wonder too, is like, could that have been salvaged, or does he just not love football? The fact that he hasn't found a place makes me think maybe he's not sure about playing college football. And that's just remarkable to me. Because that guy's got a ton of ability. And you got to think a lot of those schools that recruited him out of high school, especially some of those directional schools in Florida, they wouldn't have a place for him. Remember that? And Florida State offered him late. Not saying that Mike Norvell and those guys would take him now, but you got to think Florida Atlantic or Florida International or South Florida, somebody would take him. But so far nobody has that we're aware of, right? Hadn't been updated in the portal. And so that's just interesting to me. I mean, it really is. A guy that was one of the better players in the state of Florida as a senior at Mosley High School, maybe he just lost his love for the game. Maybe. And maybe he got here and realized, hey, this college sports thing is maybe more work than I wanted it to be. Maybe he didn't want to go to school anymore. That happens too. It does. But that's one that really surprises me. Some of the other guys, I'm not surprised they haven't signed yet. And that's not necessarily an indictment on their ability. But, man, there are still thousands of players in the portal. And guys are going to start getting a lot more desperate. Before it was like, hey, the players wonder which school will outbid the other. As we get deeper in this process, it's going to be which player will underbid the other, right? Guys of comparable ability, it's like, hey, I'll come to school there for $100,000. I'm like, oh, well, we got a kid, comparable ability, that's willing to come for $75,000. Okay, well, I'll do that too, coach. Matter of fact, just to make sure I get the gig, I'll come for $50,000, right? That's going to be the scenario that plays out, because the reality of a life without football is kind of settling in for some guys, and especially guys that maybe have grown accustomed to the facilities and the amenities afforded them in the P4. Now all of a sudden I go take a visit and I go someplace and they don't even have a complete stadium. You know what I'm saying? They've got a rinky-dink weight room that may not be much better than what I had in high school. Like, that's the reality for some players. And you got to think, hey, if I really want to play, I got to do what I got to do. But you're going to see some portal traffic around the conference in the spring, but not many of those guys will be expected to make a difference next year, just like we saw this year. How many of those spring portal linemen did we sign? We had to press some of those guys into service. Of course, Blake Steen, one of the top offensive linemen in the spring portal, has an injury game one, right? But then, Zach Owens ends up playing a lot for us, started the bowl game, and so one of the things I kind of pointed out yesterday, somebody asked me about strength and conditioning program. Think about those guys, right? Like, oh, well, Steve, what about our strength and conditioning program? Do we need to upgrade there? I'm always about upgrading, always. I think we've got a good group, but you got to give time for things to take root. So all those spring portal linemen showed up in June and had to play a football game September 1. I mean, how much can we do in 90 days? Strength and conditioning to prepare guys for the Southeastern Conference. Because I don't care what anybody says, okay? Nobody worked as hard in the spring knowing they were transferring, right? You worked out some, but it's not like in-season or supervised workouts with the strength and conditioning coach at our new school. So basically from January until June 1st, those guys really didn't work. Now, some guys worked out, but you understand what I'm saying? They weren't pushed. So then you show up on campus and you're not in your peak physical condition. And then Shad Williams and Jaworski and those guys, they got to get you up to SEC speed in basically 90 days because camp opens. And then you're playing a football game. And so I think that was a factor too, especially with some of these offensive linemen. Because you had guys show up that weren't into peak physical condition, and you're already fighting from behind because they don't get the benefit of the spring practice and the offensive install. On top of that, we're trying to stack workouts to get them into shape. And I think that was a factor too. Javen James, also a guy that was a late addition, right? So again, you go back and think about, how many of those December portal guys played this year? How many of those spring guys played this year? right? Kind of all starts making sense, doesn't it? All right, time for our Close with Blair Player of the Day, brought to you by Blair Chandler at closewithblair.com. That's C-L-O-S-E with Blair, B-L-A-I-R.com. His phone number, 601-500-2344. 601-500-2344. So, save that number in your phone as Mortgage Guy, because you may forget the name, but you'll remember the need. You're like, hey, I already have a mortgage guy in my phone. Yeah, because you're big time, right? You may be from small towns, but you're not small time. You got a mortgage guy, and Blair Chandler is your guy with 25 years of experience and know-how in a very complicated industry. He knows how to construct loans to give you the best chance at approval. It's true. Got his own operation now with Fairway Mortgage. Be sure and reach out to him when you've got mortgage needs, whether you're looking to refinance or buy a home, right? Could be your first home, your next home, or your retirement home, or perhaps that game day condo that could prove to be more affordable than you think. Blair knows how to get things done. Don't overthink this. This is a life hack. It's too important, right? I've done the research. I've bought multiple homes in my life, and I can tell you, you need a seasoned operator to handle something like this, because you could get in a bad deal. You could. You're like, oh, I got in a house, but then you pay more than you have to. Blair's going to get you the best deal possible. He's a bulldog through and through, rides a wave of emotion just like the rest of us. Season ticket holder in multiple sports, has a place here in town. Throw your business his way. Blair Chandler at closewithblair.com. Okay, we're going to change it up a little bit. Player of the day. It's going to be Thomas Valinkas. I told him, I said, I'm going to be honest with you. If my name was Thomas Valinkas, and it's interesting, his brother says Valencias, I would be Tomas. I would be, can you imagine how that would kill when you meet a girl? Oh, what's your name? I'm Tomas Valinkas. That's great. It's great. I might change my name to Tomas. It's wonderful. But in line to be the Friday night starter. Still got to earn it in the spring. But, obviously this is a guy that Brian O'Connor knows and trusts. He was the number 2 at UVA last year. Jay Wolfick was the Friday night guy. But Tomas, as I want to call him, is expected to be the guy to probably throw the first pitch of the Brian O'Connor era at Mississippi State baseball. We need him to be a true Friday night guy. And what's so interesting, too, you go back and you think about, kind of what he did last year, and maybe he was a little bit ahead of schedule last year. Big physical guy for sure. But you go back and just kind of look and see, what he did last year. 13 appearances, 12 starts. Was the ACC all-freshman selection, went 6-1 with a 4.9 ERA. That's got to come down a little bit, obviously, but you expect that. But 70 punchies in 64 innings pitched. We're averaging over a strikeout per. Yeah, I can kind of live with that too. But and the guy that worked deeper in the games, the longer it went. But interesting stat here, too. 4th nationally among freshmen in all of college baseball with a 4.12 to 1 strikeout to walk ratio. I like guys that throw strikes. Yeah, product of Baylor School, was a Gatorade Tennessee Player of the Year. Very highly accomplished prep player, and a guy that fits what Brian O'Connor wants. And so, I think this is a guy. We haven't seen any spring scrimmages, right? In the fall, he was really good. So I think that's a name that maybe some of you are a little bit unfamiliar with. You need to get familiar with. Again, we've kind of put this super team together. And a lot of people around college baseball and the college baseball media are kind of starting to get it. It's like, oh, I forgot. Yeah, like that great portal class that State had, back in June. And you look up and it's almost like an all-star team, right? It's like many of the best players from Mississippi State returning, and a lot of the best players from Virginia coming with O'Connor. Then you had the number 3 portal class in the country, right? So the math works in favor of the Diamond Dogs. So I think people are kind of sneaky about this. They're like, wait a minute. You Mississippi State didn't even win a regional last year, but you look up and it's like, hey, did anybody in the country upgrade their roster more than Mississippi State? I would say no. They did not. right? Because like you look at what LSU did, and again, I'm an LSU lover and hater at the same time. Like I respect what they've done. I hate the fact that they've kind of done it at our expense, right? But I respect them. I respect LSU. I absolutely do. They're what we should have been. They took what we did in the 80s into the 90s and took it farther than we ever did. And so that's one of the reasons I'm a hater. But if you look at them, they lost a lot last year, a lot of core pieces, and they're trying to replicate this in the portal. State is too. However, it's not a scenario where Brian O'Connor is having to get to know a lot of new players because he brought some of his favorites with him. And then Justin Parker obviously knows the strengths and weaknesses of the guys that are returning. And so I think State has a leg up in that respect. And again, if we can settle some roles in the bullpen, I think it's going to be a year that we want to remember. All right, time for today's Top 10 list is always brought to you by Calido Guitars. CALIDO, guitars.com. It's the best place for you to buy a stringed instrument. It's a Mississippi State owned and operated guitar shop. They specialize in guitars, but carry banjos, ukuleles, fiddles, violins, anything you need. And they handle it all with such care, right? Because they understand not everybody can make it to their showroom in Lake Jackson, Texas, but you still thought enough of them to do business with them. They're going to give you exemplary service. They're going to give you incredible expertise. They're going to give you quality service before, during, and after the sale. How many times do you buy something and all of a sudden, once it's at your house, you can't get a hold of anybody? That's just not the case with them. You can deal with one of these big conglomerates, right? And they can get you a quality instrument. Maybe. But are they going to be able there after the fact? No, they're not. They're not. Somebody is just going to take your online order and go slap a shipping label on a box in a warehouse, and they're going to put it on a truck and send it to your house. And you know what? Maybe that's enough. But more times than not, that's not the case, right? Everybody can handle things when things are perfect. But you know what? Calido Guitars takes the steps to ensure they're as close to perfect as they can be. It's not just them hoping to get lucky, right? So they're going to give you a promo code to do business with them, some incentive, right? Just by listening to this show, you're unlocking some savings. Promo code BSR. We kept it simple. Right? Daniel and I had lunch and we talked about it. And he goes, what do you think the promo should be? I said, let's just make it simple for everybody and stick with BSR. I'm the one that invented that promo code, right? So a lot of people share it, but BSR is your promo code. That gets you a 10% discount off their already low price. That gets you free shipping. That gets you no sales tax unless you live in the state of Texas. And they're going to make a 5% donation to the Bulldog Excellence Fund. Just think about how much you're saving just with that promo code. Right? The discount off the instrument, the sales tax break, unless you live in Texas, and then no shipping, right? That adds up quickly, right? So that shows how desperately they want your business, and you know what? They deserve your business. They're Mississippi State people. I've got a Steve Vai signature guitar from them, and I love it. I love it. It's the most beautiful instrument that I've ever owned. It sounds incredible. I got a guitar stand to keep it fresh. I got a gig bag when I need to travel with it. Listen, the guitar player in your life maybe hasn't been introduced to Calido Guitars. Maybe you should introduce them. Maybe just like, hey, order them some strings or get them some cables. Get them some accessories and say, hey, I heard about this great guitar shop. It's owned by Mississippi State people. And I know you're a guitar player, and I wanted to kind of introduce you to that and think maybe this may be an operation that you want to do business with. So whether you're looking for a brand new beginner guitar, an intermediate guitar, maybe your skill level is enhanced, you're ready to upgrade. Maybe you're committed now. Or maybe you're a pro player and you want to get like that Joe Sat signature model, but you need, it's like, hey, Steve, it's very expensive. Well, we can get it for you at a discount. Yeah, for sure. And it'll be set up perfect. And if you got specifications, like you want to call in and say, hey, this is what I want, but this is how I want it set up, they can do that for you. That's the special touch of a local place like that, right? You can just call them and say, hey, this is what we need to do, right? Be sure and check it out. You'll be glad you did. CalidoGuitars.com. You're a Mississippi State owned and operated guitar shop. Bulldogs through and through. Okay, so Dave hits me up. Said, Steve, longtime listener to the show, love the top 10 list. Have you ever done the top 10 rock songs of all time? We've done some things similar. right? I don't know that we've ever tackled this, but now seems like as good a time as any for us to kind of jump aboard this, because honestly, like, my feelings change over time. And so this is like my top 10 rock songs of all time right now. I may feel differently a year from now, but most of these are going to make the list just about every time. Now, sometimes I'm in a guitar rock mode. Sometimes I'm in a lyrical content mode. Sometimes it's percussion. Sometimes it's like an infectious bass line. But here's my take on this, okay? Top 10 rock songs of all time. I would say that maybe the top 6 or 7 will never change for me. Now, you may disagree. That's okay. It's okay. Number 10. Jimi Hendrix has to be on this list. Has to be. Has to be. And so I did a little thinking. I was like, you know what? Do we do Purple Haze? We could. But I thought, hey, you know, what's really like the more rockin' song? Like, what's the song to me that kind of typifies the Jimi Hendrix experience? And I went with Fire. And I love the opening to this. I love the bass. I love the vocal. I think it's one of Jimmy's vocals. But I also think, too, about, you know, we're the country that invented rock and roll. This is a rock and roll song at its core. So Fire from Jimi Hendrix coming in at number 10. You say, Steve, my gosh, how loaded could the list be if Jimmy's number 10? Well, one of the reasons Jimmy's a little bit lower is there are some other vocalists that I think are better, right? You can't diminish what the Jimi Hendrix did, one of the best trios in the history of music. But let's move ahead. Number 9. And some of you would say, Steve, this band probably should be higher than number 9. Well, you got to remember we're not ranking bands, we're ranking songs. And you may have chosen a different Van Halen song to represent them on the list. There is no denying that Eddie Van Halen changed music forever. And I think in many respects, like, I think maybe you go from Chuck Berry, Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen. Is that the natural progression of modern rock guitar? Maybe it is. Some people would say following Eddie, maybe Dimebag Darrell was in there. Maybe. But I think if you go back and you begin to kind of work through this, the evolution of rock music, Van Halen was Van Halen because of Sir Edward. Everybody else was great, but not everybody was legendary. David Lee Roth, a great frontman, not necessarily a great vocalist. Put on a great show, had a lot of machismo, but there are better singers. And I decided we had to go with something off the first Van Halen album. And so I began to think, what typifies the glory and majesty of Edward Van Halen? And so I went with Ain't Talking About Love at number 9. I think it's a good vocal performance, but I think the intro to that, the guitar to open that song is just ridiculous. And the guitar solo, like, there are some guitar solos that don't fit songs. And what I mean by that, just compositionally, it just kind of feels like this is a chance to kind of, you know, show off a little bit. To me, the solo, what I Ain't Talking About Love, is perfect. Like a perfect match for the rest of the song. The composition's flawless. Number 8, I had to get this band in here. And I don't know that they get enough respect, to be honest with you. Everybody knows this. And again, sonically, we took a leap forward because of Brad Delp and everybody involved in Boston, you know, making their own tube amps and things like that. You know, educated at Berklee School of Music. And so there was a lot to Boston. We could have gone a lot of different ways here. And I think when you go back and you listen to those first 2 albums from Boston, I think it's easy to forget how unique the sound was in the proper context. But we got to go with More Than a Feeling. You have to. Incredible vocal. And just it's one of those anthemic type songs. Everybody knows it. Number 7. I had to have Ozzy on here somewhere, and I couldn't decide if we wanted to go War Pigs or go with something off the solo stuff. I decided we had to work in Randy here. Now, Randy and Eddie, contemporaries, but very different. right? Both of them come from a classical music background, right? Randy was a guy that pushed himself, I think, as great as a soloist as he was, I think he excelled more riffing. I think some of the things that he did compositionally was really uncharted territory for rock music. I think Eddie was obviously the better soloist. I think Randy may have excelled in just some of the riffing stuff. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. But we're going with Crazy Train. And it's one of those songs, too. Everybody knows that it's still played at all the sporting events. It should be played more often. Number 6, you knew at some point they were coming, right? You know me. You know what a fan I am. Matter of fact, just the other day, I wore my Alan Collins shirt on the day of his death in honor of Alan Collins. Nobody asked me about Alan Collins that day, but I wore it, my own little private tribute. I didn't feel the need to go put it on my Instagram or anything. But if you're talking Skinner, you got to go Freebird, right? And I've shared this story with you guys before because, like, I love to know the stories behind the songs. And Alan Collins, maybe you've heard Mississippi State's own Charles Cross of the Seattle Seahawks playing in the Super Bowl. How about that? Another Bulldog possibly getting a ring here. Super Bowl is here, and that's where MyBookie helps you turn bets into bankroll. Everybody's watching the game. Everybody's got a take. Everybody's got a 7-layer dip recipe. And this is the one game where props matter just as much as the final score. That's why so many people use MyBookie. Their Super Bowl prop board is deep and fun to play. It's the same reason they get talked about on Jimmy Kimmel Live every year when this game rolls around. If there was ever time to get in, it's now. One account, one wallet, bet the spread, live bet the second half, hit the casino during commercials. It all lives in one place. Go to mybookie.ag now and use promo code Boneyard and get your first bet covered up to $500. That's right. If it doesn't hit, use your bet back bonus token and run it back. Don't just watch the big game, make it pay with MyBookie. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. A lot of people are going to be talking about a new year means a new you. Well, that's not necessarily the case. How about a less burden you? Therapy can help more easily identify what weighs you down and holds you back by offering a very unbiased perspective to better understand your relationships, your motivations, and your emotions. I'm a person that absolutely believes in therapy. I think everybody needs someone they can tell everything to. Perhaps you're in that situation too. We're going to ask you to give our friends at BetterHelp an opportunity to help you deal with the triggers in life and the hang-ups, the heartbreaks. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with a qualified therapist. Sign up today and get 10% off at BetterHelp.com. That's better, HELP.com. It doesn't have to be this way. It could be a better version of yourself and a better version of life. Visit BetterHelp.com today. You ever Googled yourself? You may be alarmed to note exactly how much of your private information and data is out there for anybody to access. Whether it be your phone number, your home address, or details about your family. It could be your kids' names, their ages. Whether you agree to this disclosure or not. And that's because data brokers are collecting and selling your information to marketers, scammers, and basically anyone willing to pay. It's the reason robocallers know your name, and while ads seem to follow you on every digital platform out there. Well, Aura fights back for you. They remove your personal data from broker sites and keep it off. Aura also alerts you fast if your information shows up in a data breach or on the dark web. But Aura is more than just data broker removal. It's a full digital security suite that protects every part of your life online. Aura gives you a VPN to stay private, antivirus to block threats, a password manager to keep all your logins safe. They even give you spam call protection to cut off those stupid scammers. Aura also scans the dark web regularly for your most sensitive information like your social security number, bank logins, passwords, and they will notify you instantly if you are somehow exposed. If your identity is ever stolen, you're backed up by up to $5 million in insurance and 24/7 U.S.-based fraud support to help you recover everything quickly. Other services charge about the same, but they only cover one or two areas. With Aura, you get it all. Data broker removal, credit and identity monitoring, device protection, and fraud support, all with one simple app. Aura removes what is already exposed, protects what isn't, and puts you back in control. Right now, you can try Aura free for 14 days when you visit aura.com/remove. That gives them plenty of time to go ahead and start protecting your data. They can remove your personal information from data broker sites. Sign up today at aura.com/remove and get the peace of mind that your privacy, identity, and finances are all safeguarded. That's Aura, AURA.com/remove. Certain terms and conditions apply. Be sure and check it out today at aura.com. Wrote Freebird, the majority of Freebird. And he was inspired by a letter that his wife wrote. They were having some problems, and she wrote him a letter, and she opened the letter with Alan. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Crazy, right? And so then he takes it and then puts it in the lyrics and then kind of gives her the answer. Is it, I'm free, I'm a free bird, and you can't change me. I have to live my life. And sadly, she died during childbirth. Alan Collins led a very tragic life. But when I think about those live performances, Gary Rossington, Steve Gaines, and Alan Collins, everybody getting a chance to play a guitar solo, it's ridiculous, man. Everybody got a guitar solo in Freebird. Number 5. While I don't have the Beatles on this list, I had to work in the Stones. Now, a lot of people, you go a lot of different directions here with this one. Some of my favorite Rolling Stones songs may not be your favorites, and vice versa. That's okay. They got a diverse catalog. Dave Murray goes to see the Stones like all the time, and he and I have had many discussions over the years, like who the best frontman like in rock and roll history is. I always side with Freddie Mercury, and I admit to being a little bit biased. And Dave Murray's like, excuse me, Mr. Mick Jagger. I said, I just think Freddie was a better vocalist. I think the total package, Freddie was just better. Not to say that Mick Jagger isn't an incredible frontman. He is. He has a lot of stage presence. I just think Freddie was better vocally, and everything Freddie did was just majestic. But it's Give Me Shelter. It's one of my favorite Rolling Stone songs, and I love the backing vocal on this. It's just absolutely ridiculous how well it matches the song. It's one of those songs that I think is perfect. Now, I believe that every one of you would have my top 4 somewhere in your top 10, probably in your top 5. Number 4, and you knew these guys were coming at some point too. You could make an argument they are the greatest rock and roll band in American history. I would say it's either these guys or Aerosmith. And there are no Aerosmith songs on our list today, which I thought long and hard about because I'm an Aerosmith freak. And, not getting Dream On here is one of those ones I think, man, but it's not really an up-tempo rock song. But, and you may have heard, they have digitally remastered the first Aerosmith album. That'll be released soon. Everywhere. They're doing like a box set. They're doing vinyl. And the sampler that I've heard on the website is incredible. And that's one of the things, like as much as I love that first album, like One Way Street, I love it. I used to play the harmonica part just by memory. I love it. I've always said you could tell that the record company didn't believe in Aerosmith at the time. And so the production value of that debut album wasn't great. And so they're kind of righting that wrong now with modern technology, which is wonderful. Now, back to our countdown. You couldn't do the Eagles without doing Hotel California, right? And again, there's a lot. The songs in our Final 4, there is a lot of cryptic and visual imagery associated with the storytelling in these songs. And a lot of people have some ideas about this song. I tend to believe the darker interpretation of the song. I don't like this modern whitewash thing because when we began to hear about all this in the late 70s, early 80s, and kind of what the lyrics represented, it made a lot of sense. And people, as they've aged, have tried to kind of back away from that. I just don't buy the modern interpretation. It's like, oh no, it's just like, on a dark desert highway, I do believe there is some sinister applications in this song about Hotel California. I do believe the original stories about this having some type of association with the church of the devil. I absolutely believe. I believe that. You may feel differently. Number 3. This may be my favorite song of all time. And you say, well, Steve, why is it not number 1? Well, it's because I think maybe collectively, as a rock fan base, maybe we don't all agree. And so I tried to defer to popular opinion in some respects. But if you've never seen the Kansas Behind the Music, I would encourage you to watch it. And Carrie, it was kind of a throwaway. Like they're finishing up the album, and Carrie's like, hey, I think I got one more. And it turns into Carry On My Wayward Son. And I think every young man in some respects has fashioned themselves as a wayward son. Well, I actually was one. And I love this song. There have been times in my life this song has brought me to drive in excess of the speed limit. There are other times it's brought me to tears. It is one of those songs that is always there when I need it. And it is an anthemic song of empowerment. You know, carry on, my wayward son. You know, and there's so much of that I think about. It's like, you know, this too shall pass. You just got to keep grinding through. Number 2, and some of you probably would expect me to have this at number 1. We spoke extensively about Freddie Mercury earlier in the countdown. I don't know that there is a more popular song in the history of the world from the rock genre. And I give Wayne's World a lot of credit because, to be honest with you, that Night at the Opera album is really not that great. There's a couple of really good songs on there, but because the album maybe wasn't as great commercially as some of the other material, I think this album was kind of fading until Wayne's World. And then Wayne's World like reintroduces it to a new generation. And then with social media, with all these pop-up raves and things like that, every time I see somebody do a great interpretation of Bohemian Rhapsody, I share it. I share it with my family because one of the greatest joys for me, because as you guys have heard, the first album that I ever bought with my own money was in 1980. It was Queen's The Game because I had to have Another One Bites the Dust. I had to have it. I had to have it. And it just made me feel so special. I could listen to Queen whenever I wanted to. And then when Freddie got very sick, of course, I had all this, you know, I grew up in the Bible Belt. And people were like, man, how could you listen to this guy's music? He's gay. And I'm like, that doesn't matter to me. Right? That doesn't matter to me. Which that in and of itself brought a lot of, you know, indictments, especially for a young man that was raised in a Levite tribe. I said, I just like the music, right? I just love the music. And I grew up a lot through all of that, to be quite honest with you, because that's what happens is like other people's opinion, people try to force their opinions down your throat, right? And they try to convince you that you're wrong because you don't agree with them. And I just said, you know what? I just don't feel that way. I don't, it's not that deep with me. I just love the songs. And so my kids have heard about Queen their whole lives. And then I got to bring them all with me to see Bo Rap at the movies. And I couldn't wait. It was years in the making. We finally got a chance to go watch Bo Rap. And my kids were already fans. And then to see the Freddie Mercury story and the story of Queen kind of play out the way that it did, and he was so courageous at the end of his life, it made me feel good to pass that legacy down to my children. And then to get into Mia's car one day and she cranks it up and Killer Queen is playing. You know, those things matter to me. But I think also, too, it's one of those things about being willing to accept people where they are without them having to be a person that we wish they would be, right? To love people and accept them as they are. That's what love really is, right? Truly. So Bo Rap, number 2. Number 1, and I think this is the greatest song of all time. And I also think that it's one of those songs, too, when you go back, the cryptic nature of the lyrics is just incredible poetry. It's just British poetry. And yet we're talking about the Pet Shop Boys. No, we're not talking about the Pet Shop Boys. We're talking about Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. And if you are driving down the road and all of a sudden they go into the breakdown and Jimmy Page breaks into that incredible solo, if you don't have to set the cruise, you're just living life wrong, right? This song is just such a journey. And it's one of these things, too. Robert Plant has said, I still play it. I don't love it the way that I used to. And he goes, it was from a different time. I think it's a timeless song. And I used one of the lyrics in one of my titles yesterday, when I wrote about, or 2 days ago, whatever day it was, Monday, when I wrote about a bustle in the SEC hedgerow. Well, of course, that's a lyric kind of borrowed from Led Zeppelin. And it's just, we talk about perfection. We talk about capturing a moment. We talk about musical composition. We talk about lyrical content. We talk about vocal performance. We talk about percussion. In my mind, there's nothing that compares to Stairway to Heaven. The closest thing to it is Bohemian Rhapsody. And what do these have in common other than the fact that they're British acts? But they are theatrical and anthemic, and they're songs that make you think. They are songs that use obscure language that kind of make you run to Google and kind of figure out what are they saying here, right? So that's my thought on it. So, Dave, I hope I did it justice. And we're going to kind of do a play off this on Friday because there's some songs that didn't get included. So we're going to have Dave 2.0 on Friday. So, David, thank you for the suggestion. Happy to do this. It's so difficult to do. It is to take the 20, 30, 50,000 songs that are always bouncing around in my head and pick 10. It's tough, right? But yeah, I think these are probably the greatest rock songs of all time. And these are true rock songs, right? This is not a subgenre. These are just true, great, straight-ahead rock and roll songs. And so I hope that I satisfied you. Download this list on your Spotify. You can do so. Go to Dogmatic67, DAWGMATIC 67 on both X and Spotify. It's where Roy Samonte houses everything for us. Roy back on his game, doing a great job for us. We're going to double his pay in the new year. And in addition to that, you can find me on all forms of social media at Scout Steve R. All right, next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart, a Starkvillian institution. We love Campus Bookmart. And why? Because they have the things we want. Don't overthink it. When it's gift buying time, just buy the Bulldogs in your friends and family group Mississippi State merch. Simple as that. We're easy to please. We really are. We'd love to have that new fashionable quarter zip, that button up, that M over S hoodie, something for the office, something for the fan cave. Sometimes we just complicate things. You know what? You could just be very thoughtful, right? You buy some Mississippi State merch, they open it, they gasp, they say, oh, you know me so well, right? And you do. Make gift buying simple. Visit Campus Bookmart next time you're in town. You can peruse all their fine selections in person. You may even get a complimentary hug. I always do. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it is. But nevertheless, the quality of service and selection unsurpassed at Campus Bookmart. Miss Kathy Brown knows what true maroon looks like. That way you don't get hung up with some third-party vendor in a crimson Mississippi State shirt, walking around looking all silly. You can't have that. If you can't make it to town, visit them on the World Wide Web, courtesy of Al Gore's Internet at campusbookmart.net. By being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. That is BSR. That stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. Makes it easy to remember. That gets you no shipping on all orders over $75. Any order less than $75, absolutely incomplete. Campus Bookmart. All right, Bulldogs will be in action tonight on the men's side, taking on LSU down in Baton Rouge. And, it hadn't been the best of runs for LSU in recent years. Hasn't been, right? It probably should have been worse. You and I both know they had the sweet deal conversation. I still think all that was just ridiculous, man. It really was. It was ridiculous. Nevertheless, Matt McMahon has tried to pick up the pieces down there. It's been a real struggle. They're currently 13-7, which is better than us, but 1-6 in SEC play. They've lost 2 in a row. They are 9-2 in the Pete Maravich Assembly Center, which is where we will play them this evening. Let's kind of look back and see what the Tigers have been up to this year. They knock off Tarleton State earlier this year by 36. They blow out UNO, the Privateers. They get FIU, 17 points there. They blow out Alcorn State, put up 107 in that game. They get 99 against Omaha. They get Drake by just 9 points. LSU was the visiting team in the first game of the Emerald Coast Classic down in Niceville, Florida. Great place to be. And then LSU knocks off DePaul to win the trophy of that preseason event. In the ACC-SEC Challenge, it's LSU winning in overtime over Boston College. They lose substantially to Texas Tech. They played them in Fort Worth out at Dickies Arena. It wasn't in Lubbock. It was the coast-to-coast challenge. They played that on a neutral floor. And the Texas Tech men's team wins 82-58. They get SMU, which is an opponent in common, 89-77. They get Southeastern in a little bit of a tussle, 78-65. They get Prairie View, give up some points in this game. You would think they'd be able to handle them, but it was 104-90, so they weren't stressed, but they still gave up a lot. They get Southern Miss 90-62. They lose the SEC opener on the road at Texas A&M, and we know how difficult that venue is to play in. LSU loses by just 3. Then they host South Carolina. They lose by 10 there. Lose at Vanderbilt. Kentucky goes in, gets a 1-point victory at LSU. So, I mean, even though the record's not gaudy, it's clearly an improved LSU team. They get the win over Missouri for their long SEC win so far. They lose at Florida and then lose at Arkansas. The game at Arkansas was highly competitive. The one at Florida, not so much. They lose that one by 18. Arkansas just a 4-point winner, and that game was somewhat impacted by the weather. They had to move it up because of tips, travel concerns with all that. So that's how LSU got to where they are right now. Let's look inside the numbers. And again, this is an LSU team that scored some points. Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to play well defensively, and that has been a real issue with us. And again, I think that's really the Bulldog frustration, right, is that was kind of our calling card in the early stages of the Chris Jans era. It just hadn't quite worked out as well as we hoped. It's just how things are. And that was one of the things, too. We said we were prioritizing defense in the portal, and we got some guys in the portal not holding up their end of the deal. LSU averaging 83 points a game, giving up 73. And, of course, non-conference schedule wasn't especially challenging, so that kind of skews the numbers a little bit. They've had some struggles in SEC play. But outscoring teams by right at 10 points a game, shooting right at 49%. That ain't bad, right? Yeah, a lot of high percentage shots. They've been pretty good from three-point range, too. But it's not really their game. They're knocking down about 7 a game, shooting about 33%. Actually giving up with greater frequency. Now, that's not to say that LSU hadn't shot, 408. At this point in the year, that seems to be, a little bit less than you'd expect. But they're working more of an inside game. Good at the free throw line, too, though. Almost 78% there, knocking things down. They're getting to the line with pretty good regularity as well. Rebounds have been a bit of a strength for them, out-rebounding opponents by over 5. 38 a game for LSU, giving up about 33. Handing out almost 15 assists, giving up a dozen. Turning it over about 11 per game, and then forcing 10.5. So 0.6 is the differential there. So they're giving as much as they're taking. 122 steals and then 126 for their opponents. So that's where I think State's got to make some hay, is we've got to be able to go out there and get some turnovers and get some baskets in transition. We talked about the inside-out game. They're getting about 4 blocks a game, but hadn't been blocked much either. Playing in front of some pretty good crowds, too. That's one thing I'll say. LSU fans are a lot like us, right? A lot like us. What I mean by that is they love football. They absolutely love baseball, and they're kind of fair weather about basketball. And, that's just how it is. Like when LSU's playing well, like in the old Stroh-Miles Swift days and that sort of stuff, man, they'll pack out the PMAC. I was living in Baton Rouge back then. Like, people would go to the early service on Sunday so they could make it to the PMAC for an early afternoon game when LSU was playing well. I mean, and Stroh-Miles was ridiculous. I don't know that he gets enough credit, man. That guy was crazy good. But, I don't know if they got a Stroh-Miles Swift guy on the team this year, but they have a pretty balanced scoring attack there. Deaton Thomas Jr. leads the way with just over 15 points per game. And a guy, too, that's, been very generous with the basketball, has handed out 100 assists so far and just turned it over 26 times in 15 games played. Max McKinnon, 14.6 points a game. helps out a little bit on the boards, but that's not really his game. Michael Nwoko, a name that we know, right? For sure. 14.1 points a game, got 21 blocks, which is second most on the team. Doing a pretty good job on the glass, though, 118 rebounds so far. But Marquel Sutton has kind of been the guy on the inside that they've really relied on. 13.5 points and 165 rebounds. He has the propensity to turn it over a little bit, too. So that's something to kind of watch. Jalen Reed is a guy also that hadn't played much. 9.5 points a game, just about 6 games of action. Not sure we see him. But anyway, fairly balanced among the starters here. Pablo Tamba is also one of the starters. 7.3 points a game, and also really good on the glass, 145 rebounds. But a guy that has the, propensity to get in some foul trouble, too. He and Nwoko both are guys that struggle at times defending without fouling. But, they have played 20 games, and they've got 7 players that have appeared in all 20 games. So maybe a little more depth they've had in recent years. And we'll just kind of see how things play out. But we're going to have to go down there and play well. And this Mississippi State team desperately needs a win, as you guys, and this fan base needs something to feel good about. And we've kind of reached that point in the season where it's like it's just day to day, right? It's never a situation where you think, hey, we're going to the tournament, we're playing for postseason pecking order. That's just not how it is. We are looking at this thing as like we just want to get through the day without losing a game, right? We don't know what the weekend's going to bring, but we just want to get through this game tonight and get, the fear of losing sometimes exceeds the joy of winning. That's kind of how it feels right now, and I don't mean that to be, some downtrodden, self-loathing fan. I think it's just one of those things we have to be honest about. We just have to take this game at a time, get us a win here, get us a win there, and then we'll just see what it looks like at the end of the year. But, we're 10-10, and we've lost 5 straight. And so a lot of you are already off the bandwagon, and I understand it. We'll watch the game, obviously, because we're Mississippi State people, but I don't know that a lot of people are going into this game expecting State to win. But let's not forget what Josh Hubbard did down there last year. I mean, Hub absolutely went off and destroyed LSU. They're well aware of that. I'm sure they're going to try to mimic what everybody else has done. But this needs to be a good week for Mississippi State. We got 2 road games, and you look at them and say, well, you know what? These should be winnable. But there's nothing at this point we can take for granted. We got to go to LSU and Missouri. So 2 Tiger games, and we'll see how things go. Next time we're in Humphrey Coliseum will be against Arkansas in a week. We'll have the midweek off next week. But you got a chance to maybe make a run at some games here, and just kind of see how things happen. And you got that road trip back to Ole Miss, a game that we still should have won. It's still, you look back, and it just absolutely just chaps the hide a little bit. But we do get Missouri twice. And, again, there are some winnable games down the stretch. But we can't afford to look down the stretch. We just got to say, you know what? Hey, let's go beat LSU tonight. We'll reconvene and see how things look, and then we'll go chase Missouri this weekend as we head up to Como. Now, on the women's side, that fourth quarter against Alabama proved to be our undoing. State leads after 3 quarters on the road against a top 25 team. We weren't able to get it done. If we're going to make the tournament, we're going to have to make some things happen on the road. Great opportunity this weekend. Before we get to the weekend, on Thursday, we will play at Tennessee and then turn around on Sunday and play Missouri. Let's take a look at the Lady Vols here. Obviously, again, you think about the history of women's basketball in the United States. When I was younger, it was the Lady Texters of Louisiana Tech. And Kim Mulkey played for Louisiana Tech. And so everybody kind of knew that's one of those teams you got to deal with. And then Pat Summitt, Tennessee rose to prominence, and then, of course, Gino and UConn. And they pretty much dominated it, right? Like every year, it was so much fun to watch them because you kind of knew, right? There was such a disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And there still is, but I think it's maybe not what it once was, right? Because Tennessee and UConn dominated at a time when not a lot of schools really cared about women's basketball. And so Tennessee and UConn kind of carved out a bit of a niche there and really brought that sport to prominence. I mean, you remember those great years like with Shamika Holtzclaw at Tennessee. Absolutely ridiculous, man. It was so much fun to watch them. And I think they made women's basketball a lot more marketable, which is why more schools kind of begin to invest in that. Lady Vols 14-3. They've won 7 straight. They are a perfect 8-0 at home. So the next time they lose a home game will be the first time this season. We got to be prepared. Let's take a quick look at how the season's gone up in Knoxville. They opened up losing in Greensboro, North Carolina to NC State by 3. Great game, couldn't pull it out. Bounce back, they rout East Tennessee State. They win at UT Martin by just 9. They get Belmont by 10. So you look at these early results, you're like, hey, these games have been competitive no matter the level of competition. They go to Murfreesboro, blowout middle. They get Coppin State in a game that's not competitive. And then they go to UCLA and play the Bruins out there. They get handled out in L.A., 99-77. They bounce back at Stanford as part of the ACC SEC Women's Basketball Challenge. Still kind of weird to consider Stanford, a team on the West Coast, part of the Atlantic Coast Conference, but it is what it is. Tennessee gets that one 65-62, and then an absolute laugher against Winthrop, 112-40. They play in the Shark Beauty Women's Champions Classic in Brooklyn, New York against Louisville, and they get beaten that one by 24. Southern Indiana, not much opposition there, and then they get into SEC play. They get by Florida by 9 to open SEC play. They go on the road to Auburn, and they win that game fairly comfortably, 73-56. They come to Starkville, get us 90-80, and you guys know we just couldn't narrow the gap, but we were competitive in that game. Perhaps we've learned some things since then. They absolutely annihilate Arkansas by 35. They go to Tuscaloosa. They win by 11. They had a good fourth quarter. We didn't. They get Kentucky by 2. We got Kentucky as well. They go to Ole Miss. That game is postponed due to weather, which reminds me, too, I saw some updates earlier. Ole Miss has basically suspended all on-campus activities until February the 8th. If you've seen the pictures from Oxford, and I know there's some Bulldog fans out there kind of joking about that kind of stuff, honestly, I don't want to take it too seriously. I just don't like to take glee in the misfortune of people like that. Listen, there's no love lost between me and Ole Miss, but we got friends and we got Bulldogs that live in Lafayette County, and we're all human beings, right? At the end of the day, while I don't support anything connected to Ole Miss, those people are Mississippians. Those people that just happen to cheer for Ole Miss, we don't wish harm on them or their families. The thought of you having to live with your kids in a house without utilities and certainly no heat is not anything that we would want. And so that aspect of it, everything is more important than the rivalry and when it comes to the humanitarian side of things. But, people are like, oh, I hope the Grove is, whatever. They're just trees. They'll grow back, right? They'll be pruned. And in a couple of years, they'll be back. And at the end of the day, I'm just not going to invest any emotional energy in that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, I hope they lose. That's the truth. But that's just sports. All right, looking at the Tennessee team, looking at some team numbers here. All right, they're averaging right at 80 points a game, giving up 60. And again, that non-conference schedule had some games that were of note against quality competition, but they had many others, especially the in-state Tennessee schools where the games really just, really weren't fair. But shooting 41% from the floor, nearly 42, giving up right at 38%, shooting about 10 three-pointers a game. Yeah, 9.7, right at 30%. So maybe not especially prolific, but they do put them in the air a lot. 543 three-point attempts this year. Their opponent's just 288. Isn't that a wild disparity, right? You would think it'd be more. And maybe that's a testament to Tennessee's perimeter defense. Maybe they're like, hey, we're going to make you shoot the two-point basket. Maybe. I don't know. Kind of flies in the face of what Ben Howland always did. He wanted to make people shoot from three and low percentage shots. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But it appears that Tennessee is kind of denying the three-point basket with pretty good regularity. Not necessarily a great free throw shooting team, and that kind of surprises you from a program the quality of Tennessee. Just right at 66%. Excuse me, Yeah, that's right, 66%. That's correct. Just not getting to the line much. Making 12 free throws a game. Rebounding has been a bit of a strength, but not overwhelmingly so. It's about 5 per differential. 43 rebounds a game against Charlotte, right at 38.1. Handed out 14 and a half assists a game, giving up right at 10. They will turn it over a little bit, about 15 a game, but they're forcing even more. Forcing almost 22 turnovers a game, and they're turning that into fast break transition type points. They will get pretty handsy, about a dozen steals per contest. 76 blocks. That's not a ton. It's about 4.5. But, obviously a good team that has gotten off to a great start in the Southeastern Conference. Let's look at some individual numbers here. Talasia Cooper leads the way at 14.4 points a game. She's also the leading thief on the team. 202 steals as a team. She has 54 of them. Janiah Barker with 14.2 points a game. Not quite as handsy, but she does get her hands in the air. Second on the team with 16 blocks. Maya Paldo, part-time starter, but she's appeared in all 17 games. 12 points a game, 12.1. We'll also hand out a few assists, team basketball. Z Spearman has been good. Started 15 of 17 games, 11.3. So 4 double-digit scorers that have had over a dozen or more starts apiece. Nia Robertson, no relation, 8.2 points for her. But again, just another solid piece. She's got 11 starts under her belt too. So they've kind of toyed with the lineup a little bit. Jada Civil, 5.6 points a game. She's got 9 starts. But looking at the team, rebounding-wise, Spearman and Barker kind of lead the charge, but Cooper very active as well. So this is a team statistic. We talked about they're doing a good job on the glass, but they're not dominant on the glass. But they're a very athletic team. And for those of you that wouldn't watch them play at Humphrey Coliseum, you get it. You understand. We're going to have to bring a great effort in this ball game. So that game's going to be Thursday night, Thursday evening, tip-off at 5:30. 5:30 Central will be on the SEC Network Plus. All right, final segment of the show brought to you by the Stark Vegas Clubhouse, the best place to stay in the Golden Triangle, bar none, especially when you're bringing a large group to town. Now, if you want the whole place to yourself, nobody's going to complain. They're just going to let you rent the place out, and you can just sit there in 6 bedrooms and 2 baths, soon to be 3 of complete goodness, right? Great amenities there, the full-service kitchen, the back porch area, the wet bar, the fire pit area. So much room to just kind of spread out and just enjoy being together. Plenty of parking. So if you got a lot of guests coming, nothing to worry about, right? Just 5 minutes away from the Mississippi State campus. When it's a game day weekend, you can do your tailgating right then and there. How cool is that? And again, it's so close to campus. Just kind of run over there, watch a ball game, come back, and you can hang out some more. Yeah, it's the in-between times that means so much to all of us, right? We stayed there last New Year's and had a blast. My mom can't wait to do it again. Some booking options available too. When you Google Stark Vegas Clubhouse, their Facebook page auto-populates. You can peruse all the pictures of all the amenities available to you and your guest, but also too some booking options. You can book through Airbnb and VRBO if you want to, but if you want to save some money, book through the Evolve website and use promo code BSR10. That's BSR10, the number 10. That gets you 10% off your stay at the premier place to stay in the Golden Triangle. And you know what? You're bringing a work group to town. Instead of having everybody scattered out in hotel rooms and Airbnbs all over the county, just stay right there together. Have everybody under one roof. The Stark Vegas Clubhouse, the best place to stay in the Golden Triangle, bar none. All right, if you haven't kept up, the NCAA has now confirmed that they are looking into these tampering allegations involving Ole Miss and Clemson. Now, some would say, well, Steve, everybody's doing it. And some Ole Miss media people have kind of embarrassed themselves by sharing that type of verbiage. But it kind of reminds me of the Hugh Freeze era, right? When all of that began to bubble up, everybody's like, oh, it's got nothing to do with football. Well, then it was discovered it did have something to do. Well, it's all under Houston Nutt. Current coaching staff not implicated. Well, of course they were. Of course they were. Of course they were. Similar narrative setting coming out of Oxford right now saying, well, everybody's doing this. Everybody's not doing this. Is everybody doing some pre-portal Dr. Evil quotes tampering? Yeah. And a lot of that's originated by the agents. Like the agents are like, hey, so-and-so's considering getting in the portal. And so you take that phone call because everybody is doing that and saying, hey, yeah, we'd be interested. What's his asking price? Well, this is it. We'd be willing to meet that. Let's set up a visit. Kid goes in the portal. You have a conversation. Guy comes in. Everybody's doing that. And as Dave Boswini said, there's some people, too, already negotiating the deal. How many times did you see at early stages of the portal process, guys go in one day, commit the next? Well, obviously, they didn't have time to do due diligence. So they obviously had some advanced communication with people. That's why people have reps. But this whole situation of a guy transferring from one school to another, signing a financial aid agreement, enrolling in school, attending class, and then being recruited by the head coach, it's pretty much unprecedented. So it's really a litmus test for the NCAA about how serious they're going to be on tampering. Now, according to an article I read earlier today, last year they investigated 90 cases of tampering. 90. We didn't hear anything about it, right? And we don't know how many of those were actually proven to be correct. This situation here, as Clemson has said, well, this shouldn't take 3 months or 3 years. This should take 3 days. If the allegations are to be believed, Pete Golding was involved. Pete Golding operates under the supervision and the bylaws of the NCAA. He has what is deemed a duty to cooperate. So, if the NCAA says, Pete, we need to see your text messages, and if you've deleted anything, we need to get that from your carrier, he has to provide that. Right? You can't just, we're just going to lawyer up and not give it to you. Well, then they'll just suspend you. That's well within their province. And they say, well, it may end up in court. Well, maybe it does. And so the thing about this Froey thing, as we've mentioned, you can't make him go back to Clemson. What you could say is he's ineligible this year. You could also tell him, hey, if you cooperate, even though he has a duty to cooperate, but if you fully cooperate, we won't rule you ineligible this year. But if you don't cooperate, we will rule you ineligible, which puts Farrelly in a very interesting position, right? He's going to have to provide evidence that could, in fact, lead to sanctions against the program to which he transferred to. So, it's unprecedented. Now, does that mean anything's going to come from this? No guarantee about that. But when you begin to kind of work through the totality of this thing, as we've mentioned before, I'm glad that it happened. And yeah, the Mississippi State fan in me is like, I'm glad that Ole Miss is involved because they're going to make an example out of somebody. And who better than them? But the reality of it is there is a broader and bigger picture here. We have got to have a finality in all of this. If we don't, then next year's transfer portal is going to be even crazier. Because at what point do you consider players bound to you? When an FAA is signed by both parties, the school can't just back out and say, we're not going to provide financial aid to this player. Now, the NIL contracts, they've proven to not be enforceable. And if you saw recently the whole thing about Mensa transferring from Duke to Miami, originally it's like, well, Duke holds his NIL rights. Well, if that's true, then Miami couldn't pay him NIL. Well, they've worked out a settlement, so that's all kind of worked out, right? And if you're Manny Diaz, you're furious, right? So that's something to consider. But that's a completely different scenario. People are trying to equate the two. They're not related. That kind of goes back to that earlier tampering stuff we talked about. Did Miami have conversations with him before he went in the portal? We can't prove it, but I think everybody believes it. But this wasn't a scenario where Mensa had transferred to Georgia and signed an FAA and then was induced illegally to re-enter the portal. That's what's happened with Ole Miss. And, of course, there's a lot of jaded State fans that say, oh, well, nothing ever happens to Ole Miss. Well, maybe you've forgotten, the Hugh Freeze scandal didn't just involve escorts, right? There was obviously an ongoing investigation. It went back all the way to the Ed Center stuff, and all of that's important, the ACT stuff. So there was, it was a program of noncompliance. So it's no surprise that Ole Miss is right back in the middle of all this stuff. They're always pushing the envelope. And there's a part of that I actually admire, to be honest with you. I wish in some respects we were a little more aggressive. And I think maybe we've learned some things from them. And that's painful to say, but it's probably true, especially when it comes to player compensation. I think initially we thought, well, everybody needs to get a little something. Ole Miss kind of adopted an NFL mentality. It's like, hey, we're only going to pay like the top 50, 53 players, kind of like NFL does. You know, the guys that are going to be on the field on the two deep, the guys that we're going to expect to go produce, they're going to get the bulk of the money. And so we've kind of recalibrated and kind of following their example. It's clearly worked for them, right? And it's interesting, too, that part of the defense of the Ole Miss people are saying, well, we had to deal with so much stuff with LSU. And that's true, too. That is true. And you should turn it in. You should absolutely turn it in. Every bit of it. And I still think all that stuff about leaking the deals, if that's true, I think that's malfeasance. I think in some respects it may even be tortious interference and probably something that should be litigated. So we're not going to just excuse the fact. We say, well, you know, you don't know what we went through, Steve. Well, I do, and I'm somewhat sympathetic. But that doesn't give you license to go break the rules and harm Clemson. Right? Two wrongs don't make a right. That's an important distinction I think we have to understand. And listen, some of this stuff with Ole Miss, too, with LSU, they kind of asked for it by letting the Trojan horse set up shop in their Manning Center, right? You knew these guys were working for LSU, and, you know, maybe you did the only thing you thought you could do because you thought, hey, maybe we've got a chance to win an AFL championship, and you had a great season. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But you don't think those coaches talking to those players, you don't think a player would say, hey, coach, can I come to LSU with you? What do you think that guy's going to say? Well, of course. Of course you can come, right? We recruited you here in the first place. And so, you know, you kind of ask for some of that yourself. Some of that was manufactured misery. This is in no way excusable. I can't promise you what's going to happen. But again, the NCAA has now confirmed they're looking into it. And I think now, because of the fact that Dabo Swinney went public with this and had a very detailed timeline, I think it really, really, really puts them in an interesting position. Because Dabo and them clearly have receipts. They clearly have evidence to support their side of things. And so that's where things sit. And if the allegations can be proven and are to be believed, you got a head coach of an SEC program that's out there doing things that are improper, right? Now, they're going to have to prove that Pete Golding sent the text, right? Can't be a scenario where he has plausible deniability because Luke Ferrelli is now in Oxford. But you got to go out and prove that. Somebody somewhere, and of course, Clemson officials notified Ole Miss officials, hey, this is happening. They notified the agent, so this is happening. It's going to be difficult to disprove those allegations. Should be. So, again, it's probably a level 2 violation, right? So it's not like something that's going to bring major sanctions. But at the end of the day, something has to be done of a corrective nature here, or this is only going to continue. Not just with Ole Miss, but everybody else, because you set a precedent, and then everybody else is like, hey, Ole Miss did it. They got a slap on the wrist or didn't get nothing. We'll do it too. And then you'll have players that transfer from one program to another, and then they're encouraged to get back into the portal, and then it's open season again, right? So something has to be done, and I think that's one of those things that state fans just need to kind of sit and watch this thing play out, because even though Ole Miss is involved, there is the bigger issue here. Because what could stop anybody, right? You're like, well, at least when you get through the portal window closing, you have some sense of finality. But you would think once a guy signs an FAA, which is what the NCAA and all the member institutions wanted to replace the National Letter of Intent program, and it serves basically in the same capacity, you got to have some security there, period. Well, listen, I love each and every one of you, and I hope that you are having a good week. And again, kind of back to our first segment, if you're one of those people that's having to deal with all this, like our friends, the Rappas that live in Red Banks, Mississippi, I texted Jamie earlier. We got to know the Rappas when Ani and Matt played ball together, and they're our friends. We don't get to see them as often as we used to. We used to go to ball games together, and then I'll go eat Mexican food or whatever, and we play Cotton States League together. But they're our friends. And when I heard that 22 was 22 was being cut off there at Holly Springs, I thought about our friends, the Rappas. I checked in with Jamie, and he says, we have power now, and thank God for that. But roads are still icy. They can't get out and go do much. But those of you, again, we all have friends that are impacted by this. I'd encourage you to check on them, do what you can to help them. You can't send them an Amazon package right now, but if nothing else, you can tell them you love them. And so if you're dealing with all that stuff, we love you. We hope the best for you, and promise you it won't always be this way. You're a lot tougher than you think, but I'm sorry that you're having to deal with such difficult circumstances. If you hadn't done so, visit DutyNobleBook.com. You get signed copies of all my sports titles. Of course, that's Flim Flam. And if you don't have that, you should, right? Flim Flam, Stark Villains, Alpha Dogs, Dog Pile, The Dude, and of course, a personal memoir, When the Bottom Falls. And come join us over at True Rest Floats by Starkville. You can follow us on social media, on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. We're a lot more active on Facebook and Instagram. But the joy of floating could be for you. It has changed my life, and we've had a lot of student athletes as of late come. Some of our transfers have already come. They're already having to work out in a new way. A lot of our baseball players have already come. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for you, right? And so if you're a person that maybe needs some physical, mental, or perhaps emotional recovery, we may be able to help you. We've helped many others. Yeah, we have. A lot of our clients are people that battle with anxiety, depression, or just kind of minor aches and pains. Some even more serious than that. We've got some patients that have scoliosis and rheumatoid arthritis, and they found that it gives them a little bit of relief, and maybe you'll have similar results. No guarantees, but it could work for you. So dial 662-268-7601 to get more information, or visit TrueRest.com. Come join us over at GenesPage.com, the premier Mississippi State website in the history of this fine institution. We'd love to have you come join our merry band of maroon misfits. But until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people could see a difference in the way we live.